People were asking me, not only on the YouTube, but also on the Discord, link in the description below, if I can make a Spark build for endgame bosses. So I decided to give it a shot. In this video, I'll be showing you a version of Spark where we cut out the cheese and boost our damage to be able to kill the endgame bosses. Now keep in mind, this is a budget version. I died a couple times on the Maven, but otherwise I didn't really die. But if you're a better boss than me, you're gonna have a really good time fighting the Maven or any other boss. Now this is not an uber boss killer version. That's gonna require way more investment, but hopefully we'll invest into that and give you that version in a couple days. Now it's important to note that this build is set up for bossing, not really mapping. If you want to map, I highly recommend that you fit in an inspired learning into the build. Make sure that you stick around because I'm going to be telling you how you can fit that into the build. This build is incredibly tanky because we have immunity to ailments, 90% max res, 75% chaos res, max sap, permanent fortify, and permanent elemental flasks with 20% increased effect, giving us another 24% less elemental damage taken. Additionally, we have 29 life gain on hit with spells, life leech, life regen, 7% physical damage taken, recoup this life, and 2% maximum life gained on kill, meaning we could recover our entire health pool in about a second. This build uses a lot of tech that Root 2 made popular, as well as some ideas that came from Captain Lance to have a baby fake mage blood. Most of the damage comes from dual wielding Nebulous and converting most of our lightning damage to cold. This makes the Nebulous give 600% increased lightning damage and 600% increased cold damage, the equivalent of picking up 120 10% increased damage passiveness. With more investment, it is possible to scale Spark to the point where it's doing 40 million DPS per Spark hit, and often it will hit 2 or 3 times, making our damage be over 100 million DPS, which means we can actually just stomp wave 30 simulacrums. In the gear section, I'm going to be telling you how I crafted several of the pieces of the gear. If you try to buy them on your own, it's going to be way more expensive, so make sure you stick around for that. Before we get into explaining the build, make sure that you're liking the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, and I would really appreciate it. Here is the total that I spent to put this together, which is about 18.9 exalted orbs, which actually isn't too bad considering how tanky we are, and that it could kill all the endgame bosses. Of course, this is going to be a couple more exalts if you want to add the inspired learning. The playstyle is very easy. All we have is Spark, which we cast, we leap slam around, and then every 20 seconds we cast Wrath one time. That'll proc our adrenaline for us, and then on hard bosses we hit Smite, and that will also apply our sniper's mark on hit. Now I highly recommend that you also run a Vol Molten Shell, and I would put that on mouse button 4 because it's an extra oh crap button. Now let's take a look at our flasks. Now if you notice in this bottom section here, I'm just standing here, I didn't press them, and they're auto going off. Now this one doesn't fully automatically go off. However, we have 35% chance to gain a flash charge when you deal a critical strike. So whenever we're actually hitting the boss, we're gonna have 100% uptime on this flask as well. So to do this, there's one of two things that you can do. You can either get increased duration or you can get reduced charges per use. And I have them set up with used when charges reach full. Now you'll notice that I have an empty slot for my flask right here. And that is because we're using the Trader. This comes from a timeless jewel, Brutal Restraint, on the Balbala, and it gives you 4 charges per empty flash charge every 5 seconds. We then additionally are using Utility Flask, gain 1 charge every 3 seconds. And then I also invested in these Flask Effect Duration nodes. This gives Flask Effect, and then we also have Flask Effect here. So we have 20% improved flasks, and they're permanently up because of those nodes. Now for the flasks, we have a reduced mana flask of skills because we're going to have to do something to reduce the cost or we will not be able to cast Spark. Then I'm using 37% additional elemental resist, and that's because I'm using a Melding of the Flesh to get all my resists to 90 max res. Melding of the Flesh reduces all resist by -70 to -80, so we have to compensate for that. Then we're using reduced effect of curses on you, and then finally some cast speed. Now, the reduced mana cost of skills during flask effect, you can bench craft it. You have to unlock this by unveiling a Cinder Swallow or just find someone who has it. And then the use when charges reach full, that's right here on the crafting bench as well. You need 5 baubles and 5 of this one. Now let's take a look at the gear. So you want 2 nebulous, and you want something that gives either spell damage or lightning damage or cold damage or cast speed or multi or double damage or spells give double damage. All those are good implicits to get on your nebulous. So I managed to get this one here that gives me an extra 70% increased damage. And then I got this one that gives me 18% with 23 multi. This one was 1.5x and this one was 1x. For the helm, I crafted this mostly myself. So I just bought a base and I wanted at least some armor on it because I need some strength and I have to balance my strength and my dex because I'm using this amulet right here, which gives us brittle, sapping, and scorching conflict. So I spammed a couple of these into it, which give us on armor 10% increased mana reservation efficiency of skills. I hit it 3 times. I got this, which is just a little bit of strength, some chaos res, and then I just crafted the life. I then use Lesser Eldritch Ichor and Lesser Eldritch Ember to craft these implicits. The mana reservation efficiency comes from Eater, and the physical damage taken recouped as life comes from Searing Exile. For the amulet, you want a leadership's price, and you want to make sure that you have plus 3% maximum cold resist. That's because we are using Melding of the Flesh, and we need to have cold resist 90 so that it could propagate to the other 2 max res. Now you can anoint this by using 3 silver, and then you also need 1 of the corrupted oils as well. For the gloves, I bought gloves as is. I was just looking for some strength, a little bit of life, and some chaos res. But more importantly, I wanted this plus 2 level of socketed AoE gems. That is because we need our Purity of Ice to be level 23. So I got a level 21 Purity of Ice and then the plus 2 from the gloves. This makes the maximum cold res go from 4 to 5, which then multiplies, helps us get to that 90 max res. Now that plus 2 mod is a chosen mod. That comes from unveiling a mod, or you can use veiled chaos orbs to potentially get it. I then, once again, spammed in both of the Ember and the Ichor into the gloves, and you want cold damage leashes life. The reason why you want cold over lightning is because we converted it all to cold, and then we want unnerve enemies for 4 seconds on hit. That's basically a 10% more multiplier. For the chest piece, I bought an uncorrupted 6-link. Now I wanted to make sure it at least had some armor on it, and then I chose energy shield as well because it is easier to color things if it's a strength int hybrid if you're wanting 4 blue sockets. I then spammed in a couple of these deafening Essence of Envies, which guarantee the chaos res, and then I did it until I got some sort of strength, and then I crafted the life. Then, once again, I used the crappiest of each of the Ichors to get Purity of Ice effect and increased effective non-curse auras. We need that because we need to multiply this for the maximum cold res. Then for the boots, I bought these boots for 30C. I just wanted some life, some strength, some chaos res, and a little bit of move speed. And I wanted an open suffix so I could once again craft some chaos res. Then I once again used these Lesser Eldritch and the Lesser Elder Embers to get the 4% increased action speed and a 7% increased life regenerate. For the belt, I bought this belt, and the main things that you really want on this is the reduced last charge used and life, and then you probably want some sort of a strength roll because you need to balance the strength. I chose a Stygian Vise, but you don't have to do that. But I then use this to put in a jewel that gives me a little bit of int because I was just shy of the int requirements of Spark, which is 155. And then I got a little bit of life, but more importantly, corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. With Spark, you're hitting tons and tons of times. If you don't have corrupted blood, it cannot be inflicted on you. Some of the bosses are really annoying, and you'll just get maxed out on a pack and die. Then for jewels, I'm using a bunch of jewels that give 5% reduced mana cost of skills. That's because I'm using inspiration plus the flask plus these to reduce the mana cost of my spark all the way down to 10 so that I never run out of mana despite only having 57 unreserved mana. You need to make sure that your Sniper's Mark and your Molten Shell both cost less than the amount of mana you have reserved. Otherwise, your Sniper's Mark will not go off and you're going to be losing a lot of damage. I then grabbed the Watcher's Eye Now, the only important mod on this is 29 life gained on hit for each enemy while affected by vitality. However, someone mispriced this jewel and it was only 3x, so I just scooped it up. Then, of course, we want the brutal restraint, and that is so that we get the traitor. And then I have the melding of the flesh that I showed you. Then I'm using a hazardous research, and this makes spark fire in a circle. Some people are opting to play without this. It's up to you. I prefer the circle, so I don't have to aim at all and just can stand in place and spam. Then I used a large cluster jewel that has a little bit of attack and cast speed and gives me a little bit of life. It's an 8 property one, and then I have 2 more jewels, both of which give me reduced mana cost of skills with some multi. Now, I don't think this is necessary, and what I was telling you earlier is you probably want to add inspired learning. Now, in order to add the inspired learning, you can either move this over to here and then grab the traitor here, or you can move the jewel over to here and grab the traitor here. Either one will work, but that changes my dex and strength a little bit, and then I'd have to rebalance them, and I'm too lazy to do that right now because I'm going to start upgrading the build and going for the non-budget version of this. So then you would drop this, you would pick up these nodes and these 2 nodes and stick the inspired learning right here, and now you could steal the monster's mods. That's going to be very, very helpful if you're happy. For gems, I'm using cast when damage taken, molten shell, and frost bomb. Frost bomb gives reduced life regeneration and energy shield regeneration, and it also applies cold exposure at 15%. So very, very handy for us. Then we have an Enlighten 3, Purity of Elements, level 20, Determination 20, and Zealotry 20. Then we have Sniper's Mark with Mark on Hit, and then Smite, and this procs it, and it does not have to be linked, by the way, to it. Then I'm using a Divergent Spark, Inspiration, Pinpoint. Now, this gives us so that every time we cast, we're gaining an intensity, and after we get 3 intensity, we'll have 60% more damage. You could go with added lightning instead. That's better for clear, but this is a little bit better for bossing. Then we want a cold penetration. I got the awakening one, which will also auto apply cold exposure for us. Crit multi, and then I'm using spell echo. Then for gloves, we have the level 23 Purity of Ice. I have Vitality, Defiance Banner, and we get this for free because of our ascendancy, and then Leap Slam. Then we have our Wrath on our life. So we have Wrath, Divine Blessing. This makes it cost mana, and then Life Tap converts that into a life cost. Then, since we want to be able to pop Adrenaline, we then are going to multiply it with Second Wind, making the cost go to 3,104. But when we pop it, we get the auto heal, so we only lose 2,300 left. For Pantheons, I'm using Soul of the Brine King. That's because we don't have a good source of stun immunity, so I really need to get this stun and block recovery as well, which I haven't unlocked yet, but it makes it so we'll only be stunned 1 time. Then I really like this Soul of the Aberrath because I really hate Burning Ground. Now, the less duration of Ignite doesn't do anything for us because we're using Purity of Elements and we're already immune. Same with this, the Cannot Be Frozen doesn't do anything because we're already immune to freeze and chill. We killed all the bandits. You pretty much just about always want to kill all the bandits, but especially on AURASTACKER. For Ascendancies, you want to grab First to Strike, Last to Fall, Unstoppable Hero, Fortitude, and Inspirational. Do not play this build unless you have all your Ascendancies. Also, do not play this build unless you're in the 90s, or probably 88 is the earliest that I would consider playing something like this. Level your character some other way. AURASTACKERs need tons of passive points. If you do it and then say, well, the build's not working, I don't know what. Yeah, I'm going to say, yeah, well, I told you, you should have watched the video. Then for masteries, we have increased effect on you, vitality, mana reservation efficiency, more skill effect duration, utility charges, flask effect, life, more projectile speed, reduced mana cost of skills, increased mana reservation efficiency, and damage per aura or herald that we have. And we have increased effect of non-damaging ailments. You inflict with critical strikes. This is what helps max Brittle and Scorch and Sap. We have an excellent Discord community where people are helping each other. So if you need help with your build, or you just want to meet some cool people that are also playing Path of Exile, make sure you hop over to the Discord.